Good morning, criminal justice. Come to order. We recessed at our last meeting, so we have a quorum when we recess, and we're going to go ahead and start hearing testimony. We got a long day. Probably won't finish, obviously, before 11, so we'll do the best we can and then come back in after session, which would probably be estimate 1:30 or so. I will hold witnesses to 2 minutes this morning. I don't like to, but I've been swayed by all my colleagues that that's what they do in this building now. So I'll use my judgment if someone's in 2 minutes and still has something to contribute, which most of you do. Few exceptions. So let's start with Senator Zaffarini on Senate Bill 37. And you've got all the time you want, Senator. I was actually in a committee the other day, and the chairman gave the members 2 minutes, and I've never seen that damn thing happen before.
He gave me one.
Huh?
He gave me one, and I did it.
When members start telling other members you've got 2 minutes, I was in nominations to introduce someone. I didn't need 2 minutes, but just the idea that a member would tell another member you're limited 2 minutes, that's not the way it used to work around here, but you just got to do the best you can, Senator Zaffarini.
He gave me 1 minute, and I did
When
it.
you and I got here, we were not treated that way, but anyway.
That's right.
Elections matter. Senator Zaffarini on Senate Bill 37.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Could you interrupt? Paul, I'm trying to accommodate Senator Bettencourt. I'm trying to accommodate you, Alvarado, and Mays on catalytic converters.
Okay.
And I just told everybody you were tied up for about an hour.
Okay, well,
That was an hour.
more efficient than that.
Okay. Well, if you'll round up,
We'll round up, Mays.
if you'll round up your team,
Right,
we'll,
okay.
we'll get to you probably in about 30 minutes.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Senator Zaffarini.
That's okay.
You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman and members, Senate Bill 37 relates to the offense of hazing. It is a refile of my Senate Bill 36, which was passed by the Senate with 30 votes, but it was vetoed because of a House amendment, which has now been, of course, removed from this, hoping to get the governor's signature this time. Members, current law provides criminal and civil immunity to persons who notify university officials of hazing and cooperate with their investigations. It does not, however, provide those liability protections, first to corporations or other entities that support student organizations, or when hazing reports are made to law enforcement instead of only to university officials. Senate Bill 37 simply would extend that immunity in these instances to incentivize reporting of hazing incidents. Generally, it would extend hazing reporting immunity, first, to entities supporting student organizations, and second, to those who notify law enforcement and cooperate with their investigations, and that is all it does.
Very good. Any questions? You have any witness, sir?
This one right here, sir.
First witness, Paige Williams, with the Dallas County Criminal District Attorney's Office in support, does not wish to testify. Anyone else would like to testify for or against Senate Bill 37? If not, public testimony is closed. Charles, Senator Perry,
Thank you, Mr.
I
Chairman
see
and
you
members.
sitting there ready. Why don't the chair recognize Senator Perry on Senate Bill 509?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Currently, anytime someone is arrested for a crime and booked into a county jail, they are photographed. These mugshots are publicly available, and they are often easily accessible online. Mugshots are a crucial form of record keeping in order to track criminal convictions. However, mugshots can also cause long-term reputational damage to a person if charges are eventually dropped, dismissed, or if the person is found not guilty. Pre-conviction publicity available mugshots are often sensationalized by the media and dangerously erode the constitutional guarantee that a defendant is always innocent until proven guilty. Senate Bill 509 would prohibit the release of mugshots until a person is actually convicted of a crime. There are 2 exceptions. It allows for the release of a mugshot prior to conviction if the individual is a fugitive or an imminent threat to the community, and releasing the photo will help apprehend that person, or if a judge issues a court order to release the photo in furtherance of law enforcement. There is a committee substitute, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Chair lays out committee substitute. Senator Flores sends up committee substitute for Senate Bill 37 and is recognized to explain the differences Actually, Senator Perry, would you explain?
Yes, I will. The sub clarifies that the definition of mugshot does not include video recordings, clarifies that civil penalties apply to any business entity that is unlawfully disclosing those confidential mugshots, adds enabling language to allow for a 2-year window for the older mugshots to come in compliance with this law, removes the immediate enactment of this legislation to give time for business to become aware of the new law. Real similar, due process is our cornerstone. How many times have we seen people's mugshot thrown up on the 10 o'clock news only to find out 4, 6, 8 weeks later that person was exonerated of it, and then that mugshot comes back up if that individual does something else, not in a criminal sense, but just in a context of any other purview. I think it undermines. I think it shows back up 2 or 3 days before a hearing starts sometime, and I think it biases the jury. I think it is a problem in the world we live in today where access to things electronically are rampant and other venues it pops up, and I don't think it does public good to have that, especially, there's recently a UT coach. Not that I'm enamored by a UT coach, but his mugshot was out there, and 2 or 3, 4 weeks into that process or month, he was exonerated, but that shot's going to haunt that person for life, and I just don't think that's what we want our criminal justice.
What
If a police officer has a concern that there was some examples given, we've allowed for public interest if there's an immediate threat or if there's a threat that we could stop someone from doing harm and it's not proven yet, but they can get a court order to do it. That's kind of like a warrant kind of process. So we've tried to allow for that.
You're not interfering with suspects like on the 10 o'clock news. They take it off the video, armed robber or
No, does not include videos.
assailant or somebody.
The committee sub exempts videos specifically that it didn't intend to include. It's those mugshots at your most flattering times that seem to be recurring
Okay.
in social media and stuff. So probably a little different bill than people would expect me to carry. This is not something somebody brought to me. It is absolutely has no any connection to anything that's happened in the last 61 years of my life. I just saw it come up and I thought, it's just weird that you see those guys get barbecued going forward for something that were proved innocent.
I'm sure we'll have a healthy discussion
I
today.
think you will.
And I'll adopt your substitute when I get a quorum. But
All right.
thank you for
Thank you.
presenting
Appreciate it,
this,
members.
this idea. We have witnesses.
Okay, the witnesses for 509, Mrs. Pearl, and then after one.
Paige Williams. Pages for this, page 5 of us. Paige Williams with the Dallas County Criminal District Attorney's Office does not wish to testify, but is in support. Robin Foster, these are all cons. Anybody else would like to testify for committee substitute for Senate Bill 509? Anybody else for it? Okay. Robin Foster. Is Robin Foster here?
Do not wish to testify.
Okay, but you're in opposition. You're with the Harris County Deputies Organization. Ray Hunt with HPOU, Executive Director, is opposed, does not wish to testify. Reed Piliphant, Texas Press Association, Texas Association of Broadcasters, Freedom of Information Foundation, is opposed and does wish to testify. Yes, sir. Come down front. State your name and who you represent.
Thank you, Senator. Good morning. My name is Reed Piliphant. I'm an attorney at Haynes & Boone here in Austin. I represent the Texas Press Association and the Texas Association of Broadcasters. I'm also here on behalf of the Freedom of Information Foundation of Texas. I'm testifying today in opposition to the bill because Texas citizens have an important interest in knowing details about crime in their communities and the operation of the criminal justice system. Booking photos help to inform the public about who is being arrested and charged with a crime. In Texas, booking photos have been around for more than 100 years, and as with the vast majority of states, they have always been available to the public. To put this bill in historical perspective, one of our member newspaper editors told me, if this bill had been law on November 22nd, 1963, we would not have been able to legally publish the mugshot of Lee Harvey Oswald. And in fact, under this bill, the Dallas Police Department would still not be able to release the mugshot of Lee Harvey Oswald because he was never convicted of that crime. In high-profile cases, waiting until there is a conviction can mean keeping the public in the dark for years. To use a more recent example, you're all aware of the tragic shooting that happened at the Walmart in El Paso in 2019. The community would not have been able to see an image of that perpetrator until last month when he finally struck a plea deal. That's 3.5 years as the case was winding its way through the criminal justice system that the public would have had no image of this person who committed such a crime in their community. Similarly, when an arrest involves a public official, voters have a right to know as much information as possible about the circumstances of that arrest. Booking photos also help the news media to verify the identity of a suspect when that person has a common name. So if you've got a John Smith or a Juan Garcia, it's often difficult to tell if that's the same person who was arrested previously at a different time. This is particularly important in Texas because we limit access to dates of birth, so the news media has very few resources to confirm those identities, and booking photos can help with that. Booking photos can also help ensure that justice is served. When a citizen sees someone's photo on the news, they may come forward with additional details that are relevant to the case. That may shed additional light on whether the person is in fact guilty. A person might say, oh, I saw that person in the neighborhood at that time, or they may say, I saw that person 100 miles away at the time that this crime was committed. So we think it also serves the interest of justice. And booking photos also offer an important window into the criminal justice process. These photos help inform the public of what the government is doing or not doing in the course of an arrest. Texas courts have recognized that a person's physical condition at the time of their arrest is basic information that must be released to the public, and booking photos are obviously the best way to convey this physical condition. They may also provide important information to confirm or refute what a suspect or an officer says took place during an arrest. This part of the criminal justice process is generally closed off to the public, making it imperative that the press have this one snapshot of information that allows them to see what has transpired. So for all those reasons, we believe these photos should remain public, and I'm happy to take any questions.
I share your concerns, but what about the unfairness that Senator Perry mentioned of someone that has their mugshot and then either charges are dismissed or otherwise? So is there,
Certainly
is there
a
what's the
concern, Senator. I would
balance?
say that our member organizations have reconsidered the way they cover criminal justice in a lot of ways over the last few years and are sensitive to that concern. Obviously, in high-profile cases, there's a public interest in releasing those photos. We think if there is going to be legislation to address that concern, it should be much more narrowly tailored rather than a sort of blanket ban on all of these photos.
Chairman.
Senator Hinojosa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Right now, it is difficult for a person or even a victim to get body camera of the alleged crime and also video taken by police cars. It's very difficult, very challenging process to do that. And in this case, I guess we're really balancing the right of the public to know public safety versus one individual that for whatever reason, and I know we have a presumption of innocence, but as we have passed other legislation, we ignore the presumption of innocence. But here, it would seem to me that we're trying to find ways to keep information from the public that are needed for public safety in general. And maybe one in, 20, 30 ends up being innocent, and sometimes the case being dismissed, but for different reasons, not necessarily because they're innocent. So I share your concerns about keeping this information out of the public's hands when somebody's initially arrested and processed.
Thank you. Yeah, I share your concerns too. It's a dilemma because if you're trying to be fair to some poor dude or person that gets caught up in a situation, and I guess that's what it's like to live in 2023.
Yes, sir.
They didn't have that problem in 1820.
No, different world.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Who else? Mitch Landry, Texas Municipal Police Association, is in opposition, does not wish to testify. Anyone else would like to testify for or against committee substitute for Senate Bill 509? Before I close public testimony, let me, public testimony is closed. Now let me establish a quorum. Clerk, call the roll.
Whitmire,
Yes.
Flores.
Here.
Hinojosa.
Here.
Huffman,
I'm here.
Betancourt, Miles.
No,
King?
They're not here, that's fine. There being a quorum present, we're going to adopt the committee substitute first members for Senate Bill 509. Senator Flores moves adoption of committee substitute for Senate Bill 509. Is there objection? Here none, the committee substitute is adopted. At this time, we'll leave committee substitute for Senate Bill 509 pending. Zaffarini's out of the way. Show Senator Miles present. Joan,
Yes.
you ready? You want to deal with your substitute or your
Whatever you want.
bigger bill?
Let me get my bill book here.
I was nice and let some members go do other things, and I was too nice. They're gone, and we need some work.
Yeah.
Committee substitute for 1318.
Yes.
Chair recognizes Committee Senator Huffman on committee substitute for Senate Bill, committee substitute for Senate Bill 1318.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I will send it up to, thank you for recognizing me. So this is the continuation of the bail reform bill. As I stated in my bill layout, on Senate Bill 13 at our last criminal justice hearing, following the passage of Senate Bill 6 during the 87th session, changes are still required in our bail system to ensure public safety and that the new systems are running efficiently and effectively. After reviewing testimony and feedback since the last hearing, I have made several changes to the file version of the bill to provide additional clarity. First, the committee substitute removes the creation of a new offense for the violation of bond conditions. I still think this offense is needed in certain scenarios and could be a very valuable tool for law enforcement. And I'm going to continue to work on this in the interim, but this is such an important piece of legislation. Sometimes, we compromise and try to make the bills better so that it can more, easily work its way through the legislature. So I made that decision. Again, I'll work on this on the interim to try to work with stakeholders to come up with a solution. The committee substitute also requires that no probable cause findings under this bill be made on the record within 24 hours of the decision. There was some concern from some counties and so forth that it would take them some time, but surely within 24 hours, if you have an articulable reason, if you're a magistrate or a judge, why you are not finding probable cause, it shouldn't take you longer than 24 hours to write that down on a sheet of paper. It's just not that complicated because you have to have a legal reason while you're doing it. So anyone who's authorized to make that decision should be able to write it down within 24 hours. It clarifies who can release a defendant out on bond for certain violent and repeat offenders. The committee substitute aligns the timeline for a state appeal for insufficient bond to an accelerated 20-day timeline, which requires a prioritization from the appellate court. For an appeal under this statute, clarification is given that it only applies to a defendant who is currently out on felony bond. Some were concerned, I was trying to say, if you've ever received a bond in the past, that then the state could appeal. It's not what it says. It says if you're out on bond and you commit a new offense and a low bond, then the state can appeal that. Additionally, the committee substitute clarifies that the local administrative judge of the applicable judicial region be the official to designate a person to receive and distribute electronic notifications under Section 17027 of the Code of Criminal Procedure. Along with giving notification to the judge and prosecutor, this individual will also provide notice to the defense attorney in the case. The defense bar asked for that. This specific notification provision pertains to a situation where an individual is out on bond and commits a subsequent offense in a different county. When an individual commits a subsequent offense in the same county, the committee substitute clarifies that the defendant must go before the judge in the original case for purposes of setting a new bond and reevaluating the initial bond. Again, this puts responsibility on the elected judges who have made decisions to release someone who then commits a new offense. They have to go back to the original judge. They have to look the person in the eye and decide that they want to let him out again after considering all the factors required under this previous legislation. It also removes language relating to the Harris County Bail Hiring Board. Lastly, upon recommendations from the Office of Court Administration, the committee substitute enhances notification to victims of family violence to ensure that their voice in bail decisions is heard by modifying the notice requirements which are distributed by law enforcement. Again, Chairman Whitmire, I want to thank you for working closely with me on these changes in the committee substitute. A lot of people provided public testimony. A lot of people have come to the office and honestly met with Grayson Coker back here, my stellar staff member, who patiently has worked through all of this with many of you, and then he and I, of course, discussed it and made decisions about how to move forward. So with that, I would move, did you adopt the committee?
No, I was just
I move
switching to-
adoption of the committee
Yeah,
substitute.
Senator Huffman sends up committee substitute for Senate Bill 1318. Is there objection to the adoption? Chair hears none. Now, before us is that committee substitute, and before we vote, as you mentioned, you'll continue the process even into the interim. Because as you and I know, there's no piece of legislation has been introduced that can't be improved as we go forward. So-
Exactly, and it's a complicated system, and as you say, the criminal justice system
Criminal justice is a system.
is a system, and this is a very important part of the system, and as it works its way through. I think this is better than last session.
Sure.
It's probably not perfect, but of course, I know your objective, every member on this committee, mine, is to keep our constituents safer and to provide for public safety, and I think this makes a step in the
Very
right
good.
direction.
Thank you for your hard work.
Mr. Chairman, what's one more quick question, Senator Huffman?
Yes, for Senator Hannah.
And actually, what we're doing is trying to respond to many of the concerns that have been expressed by many district judges and prosecutors in terms of the processing of
Right.
the person charged with the offense.
And I have worked with the larger counties and the JPs and tried to work with everyone, but it does take some effort on people's part, because it is a big responsibility that individuals who make these decisions have. It does require some work, but that's just what the job entails. So,
Okay, Senator Flores moves adoption of committee substitute for 1318. Clerk, call the roll.
Whitmire,
Yes.
Flores,
Yes.
Hinojosa,
Aye.
Huffman,
aye.
Miles.
There being 5 ayes and no nays, committee substitute for Senate Bill 1318 is reported back to the full Senate with a favorable recommendation. Good job. Now you've got your 1173.
Yes.
Chair recognizes Senator Huffman with Senate Bill 1173. In fact, Senator Huffman sends up committee substitute for committee substitute for Senate Bill 1173. Is there objection to the adoption? Chair hears none. So if you'll explain the difference, Senator Huffman.
I will. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. I think I'm going to get a hard time from Senator West again for this bill, because he's going to say it's a Harris County bill, but this one actually is. Under Section 75.403 of the Government Code, the judges of the courts in Harris County that have the same criminal jurisdiction may select from among themselves a presiding judge. The presiding judge does things like preside at any session of the judges, holding ex officio membership on all committees created by the judges, serve as chief administrator of the Office of County Court Manager and County Court Coordinators, and a pretrial release services. So has a position of responsibility. Currently, there is uncertainty regarding the presiding judge's power to appoint a special judge in the case of an absence. Additionally, there is confusion regarding which individuals are eligible for appointment under this section. Senate Bill 1173 clarifies that if a presiding judge is absent for any reason and is unable to preside, the presiding judge may appoint a special judge to serve in their place. The presiding judge may choose from a list of judges who are currently serving as an elected judge on a Harris County court with criminal jurisdiction and have agreed to the appointment. Furthermore, the appointed special judge must meet the same qualifications, powers, and duties as the presiding judge. The committee substitute members adds a requirement for a selected presiding judge to get final approval from the presiding judge of the administrative judicial region that includes Harris County. The committee substitute also establishes a base eligibility requirement for the position, requiring at least one full term of service. So someone who is on their second term would be qualified. The committee substitute consolidates language from SB 1318 relating to changes to the Harris County Bail Hiring Board into this legislation. Lastly, the bill adds a requirement for all administrative judge appointments to get approval from the presiding judge of the administrative judicial region. This legislation will clarify and add oversight and transparency to the selection process to ensure that we have the most qualified, experienced judges serving as appointed special judges in Harris County. Members, this bill was brought to me by concerned citizens in Harris County who felt like the procedure was not transparent, was not fair, and being manipulated in such a way that it was leading to
Any questions?
unjust
Senator Huff?
results.
Thank you. Andy Kahn is signed up as a witness, representing Crime Stoppers of Houston, is in support, does not wish to testify. Joelle Johnson, representing herself, is in support, does not wish to testify. Mitch Landry, Texas Municipal Police Association, is in support, does not wish to testify. Robin Foster, Harris County Deputies Association, is in support, does not wish to testify. Thomas Parkinson, representing himself, is in support, does not wish to testify. Ray Hunt, representing HPOU, is in support, does not wish to testify. And Jessica Anderson with Houston Police Department is in support and does not wish to testify. Anyone else present that would like to testify for or against committee substitute for Senate Bill 1173? If not, public testimony is closed. And the clerk, please call the roll. Oh, wait, Senator Huffman moves adoption of committee substitute for Senate Bill 1151. Clerk, call the roll.
I move passage too, if you're ready to.
Yes,
Okay.
that's what we're doing.
Whitmer,
Passage to the Senate floor with a positive recommendation.
Flores.
Aye.
Hinojosa.
Aye.
Huffman.
Aye.
Miles. 4-1.
Did you call me yes? There'll be 5 of us.
4-1, sir.
5 ayes, no nos, committee substitute.
Oh, Morris,
Or one, sir.
Morris voted no.
Mouse just went no. Okay, 4 ayes, 1 nay. Committee substitute for Senate Bill. Committee substitute for Senate Bill 1173 is reported back to full Senate with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you, members.
Okay, let's see what else we can do while we wait. Yeah. How many witnesses? Huh? Where's my bill? They're gonna test, most of them are no test. Well done.
Already gave Senator Flores the language for the committee seat when he's presiding.
No, we'll help him, don't we?
Yeah.
That could be. Where's Springer?
You want me to lay out someone's bills?
Yeah, they can go over, yeah. Okay, let's go ahead and get mine out of the way. It'll take a while.
Do you want me to lay out
Elizabeth.
someone's bill? Oh, there's Senator Beth.
Senator Bettencourt. You want to-
I wonder if Springer wants you to lay out his. No, King.
Do you want to do Bettencourt's got another bill?
Yeah, hold on. Paul, we'll get to one of yours and wait for the,
Got everybody lined up.
sir?
Everybody's here, I think.
You can check this 467.
467.
Ben Court, you have another one though, the 1467. Yes, sir. You got your bill book on 1467? We'll slip it in there. You ready? Almost.
Okay, I've got 467. Chair?
Yes, sir. Chair recognizes Senator Benton Court on Senate Bill 467.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. This bill was brought to me by the
Dallas County District Attorney's Office. Since the fall of 2021, organized criminals have learned how to disrupt fuel dispensing pulsers and Texas gas pumps. The pulser controls the communication between the gas pump and the terminal, which regulates the flow at the pump. Criminals are breaking into gas pumps, damaging the pulsar to gain unlimited access to fuel, causing substantial fuel loss. Typically, the suspects will disrupt the pulsar. Other suspects pump the stolen fuel into large auxiliary tanks. The pulsar itself costs a few $100s to replace or repair. Obviously, the real problem is the loss of inventory, and hence police officers who have caught suspects damaging them are only able to charge them with misdemeanor criminal mischief. SB 467 would amend the criminal mischief statute to clearly provide that damage to or destruction of a retail motor fuel pump is a third-degree felony. By increasing the penalty for damaging or destroying a motor fuel pump, law enforcement and prosecutors will have another tool in the deterrence to reduce theft. Be happy to answer any questions. We've got invited testimony. Steve Fawcett from the Dallas County Assistant District Attorney, specializing in the crime unit.
Very well, thank you. Steve Fawcett, District Attorney's Office, Dallas County. State your name and who you represent.
Yes, Your Honor. My name is Steve Fawcett, representing Judge John Trudeau with the Dallas County District Attorney's Office.
Have a seat.
Thank you for inviting me to testify.
No problem.
I'll wait for the packet to be handed out. I'll wait for everyone to get the packet. Okay with you, Senator?
Yeah,
For you? Yes.
not our first rodeo.
But it is mine.
It is?
Yes.
Well, it's kind of like being in a court. You've been in court?
Yes.
It says,
You ought to
Well,
feel-
again, my name's Steve Fawcett. I appreciate being here. I know I have 2 minutes, so I'll keep it brief.
That's okay.
I want to first thank Senator Betancourt for filing this very important piece of legislation. To put it simply, these crooks are getting caught with their hand in the cookie jar, but they haven't gotten the cookie yet. That's what it comes down to. If they actually steal the fuel, we can prosecute them with felony offenses, and we are prosecuting for felony offenses. But if they're breaking into this gas pump, which they're all doing, and in that packet I handed you, you can see a picture of the device they're using. Excuse me, this is cutting edge piece of equipment. Prior to this, they were using stolen credit cards. The crime's evolved. They're now using this pulsar manipulating device that basically turns a gallon of gas into about a penny or two. That's all it does. Changes the price of the fuel. So they use a cash gift card, right? No longer credit cards. And then they break into the pumps and install the device. So what happens when they break into that pump, but they haven't stolen any fuel? Well, that's the testimony, the written testimony that you also have here. It's pretty lengthy, but the point is on page 2 of that written testimony, this is an eyewitness, and this is a common example. This is just one person who has called the police because he caught them breaking into the pumps. And what can the police do?
How long does it take to break in a pump and do that?
On video, I have seen less than a minute
Really?
to get into that pump and install this device. So these vigilant store clerks are catching them, and vigilant police officers. But if they haven't stolen the fuel yet, the criminal mischief statute in the penal code has a penalty ladder. So how much damage are they causing? Sometimes it's a couple $100s. Sometimes it's $10. That's a Class C misdemeanor. Slap on the wrist. That's why if you read the testimony on page 2 there, he followed them, he caught them, and he watched the police officers let them go. Because all they have is a Class C, which is a traffic ticket.
Yeah.
And if this problem sounds familiar to you, it's because in the last legislative session, this legislative body dealt with a very similar issue and passed a great piece of legislation dealing with ATMs. It's the exact same problem.
yeah.
Crooks were going around busting in the ATMs, causing $10 worth of damage, getting caught halfway through, and they were getting slapped with Class C criminal mischiefs because that's all they've done at that point, right? So it's the same logic used back in 2021, the last legislative session, and this proposal that Senator Betancourt has filed amends and adds to the same subsection, making it third degree regardless of the pecuniary loss. That's the key word that's in the piece of legislation. And that's the gist of it. So like I said, they're getting caught
Very
and
good.
currently are getting cut loose. And I've had patrol officers complain to me. I've seen it personally, cases I've had to deal with. So you provided us the tools before. and they have worked successfully, and we ask that you provide the tools again as crime has evolved.
Very
So,
good. Any
those
questions?
reasons- Oh, yeah,
If-
any questions?
No, Steve, thanks for your testimony. There's no legitimate use for this.
No, that right there is the pulsar manipulating device. I've been told by DPD detectives has a street value of about $5,000.
Right.
The only purpose that has is to manipulate that pulsar so that they can steal fuel.
Right, and this is then repetitive theft over and over once it's installed.
Yes,
Right.
so it just as you explained in your brief introduction, typically the way it works is you have a lookout scope out the gas station. You then have the installer come up and he's not stealing fuel. All he's doing is installing the device.
Right.
And then if no one's looking, a whole fleet of auxiliary tank trucks will show up. And if they can, they'll drain the tank
They'll
dry.
drain
out
the
of
tanks
gas.
dry,
Yes.
right. Whether it's I don't want to name any major, department stores, they're all being hit, or fuel stores are being hit with this.
That's correct.
And it's the same thing happened with Senator Huffman's bill last time at ATM machines. We're just going to have to keep and fill, Senator King knows this, we just have to keep up with crime.
Yep.
And this is the new face of it here.
Very good.
Correct.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. Thank you
Yeah,
for your
thank you, right. I had to make sure that the face is not Senator King. It's the pulsar right here, okay? So, right, no mugshot for him.
Jacob
That's right.
Putman, Smith County District Attorney, is in support, does not wish to testify. Desiree Castro, with the Texas Food and Fuel Association, is in support, does not wish to testify. Ray Hunt, HBOU, is in support, does not wish to testify. Mitch Landry, Texas Municipal Police Association, in support, does not wish to testify. Jason Ryan, Center Point, is in support, does not wish to testify. Anyone else present that would like to testify for Senate Bill 467? Not, public testimony is closed. Clerk, call the roll.
Whitmire,
Yes.
Flores.
Aye.
Hinojosa.
Aye.
Huffman.
Aye.
Bettencourt.
Aye.
Miles. King.
Aye.
7-0. 7-0.
7-0, Senate Bill 467 is reported back to the full Senate with a favorable recommendation.
Chairman, I may not need it, but could we put this up for local in case we get stacked up on bills?
Senator Bettencourt moves that Senate Bill 467 be eligible for local. Clerk, call the roll. Is there objection? Clerk hears none. I hear none.
Thank you, sir.
It's-
I know nothing.
It's eligible. We need to vote on Senate Bill 37 by Senator Zaffarini. Senator Flores moves that Senate Bill 37 by Senator Zaffarini be reported back to the full Senate with a favorable recommendation. Clerk, call the roll.
Whitmire,
Yes.
Flores.
Aye.
Hinojosa.
Aye.
Huffman.
Aye.
Bettencourt.
Aye.
Miles. King.
Aye.
7 ayes, no nays. Senate Bill 37 is reported back to full Senate with a favorable recommendation. Senator Forrest moves that it be referred to local and uncontested. Is there objection? Chair is so granted. Senator King, I think this would be a good time if you're ready.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chairman.
Chair recognizes Senator King for Senate Bill 947.
Thank you, members. I think I'll maybe just start with some headlines. This is a March 17th, 23 article, attacks on Pacific Northwest power stations raise fears for electric U.S. grid. December 2022, what we know about the attack on 2 North Carolina substations. January 20th, 2023, power plant, another substation attacked. And I could go on and on and on through articles. It's really interesting. A FERC study just concluded that just an attack on 9 key of the 55,000 substations around the United States could black out power coast to coast if they attack the correct 9 substations. We have, over the past several years, we've just seen an alarming number of targeted attacks on critical electric grid infrastructure. And as scary as that is, Chairman, you and I could take a deer rifle and go to Harris County and in a night shut down electricity virtually to all of Harris County. And the problem with the statutes dealing with that today, I know we had last year there were 18 reported incidents at electrical substations just in Texas. And I could go on and on and describe attacks that are all across the country. Sometimes they're just going in and stealing copper, which is incredibly dangerous. But it's this issue with the deer rifle or with explosives that we're seeing a dramatic increase. And they're also seeing ties where it looks like maybe the same group is doing it in one state that's doing it in another state. And the danger is not only does it run the risk of shutting down for days or weeks, as has been some cases, power across large areas, but also it threatens death. I, for example, have a brother-in-law, and if his power's out, he dies because he's on a breathing machine at his home. And yet, there's no way to charge someone with murder if they cause a death by knocking out power. Also, if you go knock out power at a substation with a deer rifle and you cause $20,000 worth of damage, but it takes 4 or 5 days to get the parts in and repair that, the millions or tens of millions of dollars of income that was lost to businesses, lost product from spoilage, or just the inconvenience of homes and businesses is not calculated into those penalties. So what this bill tries to do, or does, is SB 947 creates a new criminal offense for intentionally damaging critical electric grid infrastructure if it results in a power outage lasting more than 24 hours. The offense is punishable by a second-degree felony unless it results in the death of an individual, is committed using a firearm or explosive, or causes more than $100,000 in actual physical damage to the infrastructure facility. In that case, becomes a first degree. The other thing it does is it allows us to charge people with manslaughter if they cause the death by knocking out power intentionally. So it increases the punishment for manslaughter when the death was caused by a person intentionally damaging critical electric infrastructure, which resulted in a power outage of more than 24 hours. So basically what we're doing is we're saying, look, in Texas, we are not going to tolerate this. And it puts a singular statute out there. And I know I'm, like everybody else, I'm very, very hesitant to create a new statute, criminal statute. But this sets out Texas and says that we are not going to tolerate this. If you come in and you knock out power across broad areas, you are going to have a severe penalty to pay, and if you cause the death of a person, you're going to be prosecuted for homicide.
Very good. Senator Hopkins?
Just a couple of questions. Clearly, it's a great piece of legislation, but I'm wondering, kind of tying it to what, I don't know if you were in here, but the bill before that was Senator Betancourt's, where sometimes you get an individual who's in the act of committing something really bad, but it doesn't quite work out, and so in the fuel situation, for a long time, they could see someone putting the apparatus, but if they didn't actually complete it, then it was really nothing. Now he's enhanced it. So I'm looking at your legislation, and it seems to me like if someone has intentionally done whatever it was going to take to actually stop power or, vandalize or disrupt, and they would the act of doing it is bad. So if the power outages, just say, were 20 hours, I don't know, I think you're being too generous with 24 hours, to be honest, because you could have a terrorist group do it. But it was able to be brought online in 16 hours, then
Maybe age.
I'm not critical of your bill. I'm going to vote for your bill.
No,
I'm wondering
that's a
if
great
it
point.
might be a way, because I kind of, as I said, thinking about the passage.
What I was trying to do was avoid, but you're right, it may need tightening up, because what I was trying to avoid is the kids driving down the country with a 22 in the middle of the night and popping transformers. I didn't want to get them.
Yeah.
And so we were trying to make it where it causes a serious outage. But maybe we should just move it up to where it causes a widespread outage, period.
Yeah.
If it's done with firearms or explosive, which is what we're targeting.
Right. So what about situations where they use some other means? Thank you, that's the word I was looking for. Method to stop something, if it wasn't a firearm or explosive.
That is, let's see, the way we have it,
Okay. I'm not trying to complicate
No, no,
things. I just think it's
no.
a great bill and it's an opportune time in history to be looking at this, but
so it's going to be a second-degree felony, but if they use a firearm or explosive, it becomes a first-degree felony.
okay.
So causing the damage, so let's say they just do it some other way. I don't know, drop a crane on it or something, or
Yeah.
drive a vehicle into it
Drone.
or something.
A drone.
There
That's
you
what I was
go.
thinking.
What were you thinking? I'm sorry.
Drone, or
Drone.
what about if they figured out?
That's a great point. So then it would be a second-degree felony, but it's first degree if it's more than $100,000 in physical damage, or they use a firearm, or they use an explosive. Maybe we need to just make it first degree across the board and cut it down to, what would you think? Any massive outage? Maybe we can get some testimony on what would
Yeah,
constitute a big outage.
I think this is a great bill, as I said, at a really good time, and I think it could be refined. I mean, this is my opinion.
Okay, well-
Refined a little bit to make it a
I'll
great
certainly
bill.
follow the committee's direction on it.
A greater bill, make it a greater. It's a great bill now. It'll just be a fabulous.
Maybe we get some, I know there's some folks that are testifying on the electric side, maybe they could tell us if there's a better
Yeah,
way to
you-
define major
Well-
outage instead of with a time period. Right.
Most of our witnesses were not going to testify. If it's triggered, this discussion triggered some testimony, we welcome that. If not, you'll have plenty of opportunity to work on it before we go to the floor.
Mr. Chairman,
Omni, Senator Hinojosa, I'm sorry.
just a quick question. I guess, on your bill, what happens if somebody, out in the country is hunting rabbits and accidentally shoots one of the electrical grid performance?
I think we set that mens rea at intentional.
Okay.
So if it was reckless or criminal negligence, it wouldn't come under that. It would just come under the normal vandalism, criminal mischief statutes.
Yeah.
That's a great question. Thank you for asking it.
Any other questions? Tom, Omni?
I'm not tasing you.
State your name and who you represent.
I'm Tom Oney. I'm
Listen,
representing the Lower Colorado.
Let me get back
Okay, sure.
control of my committee.
Sorry, we're chatting over there.
Y'all are working, I
We were
understand.
talking about
You
that.
working. Go ahead, Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, I'm Tom Oney. I am Executive Vice President of External Affairs at the Lower Colorado River Authority, the LCRA. I'm testifying in support of SB 947, and thank you for the opportunity to testify today. LCRA is a provider of several vital services to Texans. Our services include generating and delivering electricity, managing the water supply of the Lower Colorado River Basin, and managing more than 40 parks and recreation areas throughout the basin. As defined by the bill, LCRA owns several components of critical infrastructure such as substations, transmission lines, and generation facilities. We have around 3,000 megawatts of generation serving Central Texan cities and cooperatives. As it has been discussed, we've seen an unfortunate increase in targeted attacks across our country for various reasons at electric infrastructure. Electricity is an integral part of our daily lives. Loss of electricity poses more than an inconvenience to our citizens. It threatens their safety. It threatens the safety and health of our citizens and the safety of our state and country. As a result, an intentional act towards that infrastructure that damages it should have dire consequences. We thank Senator King for bringing forth this important piece of legislation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Senator King?
I don't want to take up the committee's time, but
Yes,
you
sir.
heard the concerns that were discussed. I know Jason Ryan's back there too. Could y'all grab me later and let's kind of talk through how to tighten the bill up?
Absolutely, sir.
Thank you.
Happy to do that.
Any other questions? We have a, thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Kelly Sadler, Electric Power of Texas in support, no testimony. Oscar Garza, AAP Texas in support, does not wish to testify. Isaac Alvarado, American Electric Power of Texas in support. Michael Rigger, Southwestern Electric Power in support. Scott Hutchison, Energy Texas in support. Jessica Onning, NRG in support. Mark Bell, Association of Electric Companies in support. Roy Jackson, TNMP in support. Mitch Landry, Texas Municipal Police Association in support. Mike Williams, Texas Electric Corporation in support. Mance Zachary, Vistra Corporation in support. Paige Williams, Dallas Criminal District Attorney's Office. Ray Hunt, HPOU in support. Jason Ryan, Center Point, does wish to testify. Jason, come down, share your, state your name and who you represent.
I'm sorry.
Good morning, Chairman and Committee. Jason Ryan, Executive Vice President at CenterPoint Energy, testifying on behalf of CenterPoint Energy in support of Senate Bill 947. As many of you know, we have the privilege to serve almost 3 million homes and businesses in the greater Houston area with transmission and distribution service. For those of you not familiar with Houston, you know, you may not remember that it is the home of the largest medical center on the planet. It's also the home of the largest petrochemical complex in the world. It's the home of the fourth.
Jason, this is not a Chamber of Commerce meeting.
Yes,
okay?
yes.
But it's
So it's a,
We know what's exposed. What do you think
Yes.
about the proposed penalties for interference?
So we operate transmission lines that bring power into Houston, that if you stretch them across, line them all up, they would go from coast to coast. Any attack on those transmission lines would mean there's not enough power for the important parts of Houston. We operate several hundred substations. If those are attacked, that means that they're disconnected from the bulk power system as well. We also operate distribution lines that go from those substations to people's homes and businesses, enough distribution lines to go around the world 5 times. So we operate a lot of critical infrastructure. An attack on any of it could mean widespread outages, and we're happy to work with Senator King and others to strengthen the legislation to define widespread outages a little bit better. Because as we know, not only is there economic harm when there are outages, Greater Houston Partnership estimates that for every day without power in Houston, Houston loses $1.5 billion of GDP. That doesn't count the human suffering and potential death of our customers if there is a widespread outage. So we're committed to continuing to work on the legislation to make it better.
I almost hate to discuss the exposure that we have, worrying about copycats, but that's just part of the process. But anyway, thank you for your testimony, and I would urge you to continue to work with Senator King. Thank you.
Thank you.
Laura Noldoff, Midland District Attorney's Office in support, does not wish to testify. Senator King, do you want to leave it pending? You want to move it forward? It's needed legislation. It's your call.
General, if it's all right, why don't we leave it pending? Let me get a committee substitute and bring it back to the committee.
Sounds
right
good.
away with your counsel.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Senate Bill 947 will be left pending for continuing discussion. Good job. Senator Springer.
Yes, sir.
Mays, I'm sorry, I got this important matter, and then we'll get right in on catalytic converters, because I know it's a real important matter, too. Senator Springer, state your name and who you represent.
I represent myself.
And you do a pretty good job of it. With a little more experience, you're going to be really, really good.
Really good at it. Mr.
Another
Chairman,
couple of re-elections, you'll be a really great senator.
50 years I might be nearly as good as you are.
50 years, you'll be real smart.
I'll be really dead. But thank you, Mr. Chairman and members.
There's some optimism, Senator Springer.
No, there's no optimism.
You got to watch out for redistricting every 10 years, so
Yeah,
you got to watch
we'll
that.
have to watch out for that.
That'll be a hurdle you got to watch.
Yeah.
Bring us up to date on what we're working on.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Senate Bill 129 is the first bill I filed all session. And I'm not known for ever really, I'm not a lawyer. I don't do criminal stuff. But, there was a situation in my district, and I saw it in my House district, young man named Caleb. We're going to call this Caleb's Law. And Caleb was abducted by somebody he had worked for, who was a sexual predator for children. And, sadly, he was killed before his perpetrator could be caught and tried. He has been caught and tried, but unfortunately, our child pornography laws have not been updated since 1989. That was a pre-internet period. So think back then, people used to have snapshots of disgusting, vulgar things
Oral testimony.
that they'd done to kids. Nowadays, It's on the internet. There's thousands and thousands of images, and we know what these people are doing to our kids. And we're unable to prosecute them the first time because you have to prosecute them on every single image, is my understanding. And so what the bill does is it updates the code. It says per however many hundreds that you have, you fall in different classifications. But the one thing it does allow us, when we know we find somebody truly evil with things images that are being seen, is they can prosecute them the first time for a first-degree felony. And so that is really, I think, the most important thing that we do here. I do have some witnesses. I have the family that is here. I have Caleb's mom who's going to be testifying, along with a couple assistant district attorneys that really sort of brought me this case and sort of explained it and really have worked on it for the years to really sort of come up with, I think, a really good bill. And so this morning when I was getting ready to come in, I was looking to grab my cufflinks. I remember Sean Theory in the house gave me these cufflinks, and it's a starfish on them. There's an old saying, because man's walking down a beach, sees a boy throwing something into the water, goes up to him, goes, "Son, what are you doing?" He goes, "The tide's going out. I've got to save these starfish." He throws them back in. He goes, "Son, there's miles and miles of beach. What? You can't make a difference." And he bends down, he picks up another starfish, throws it back in the ocean, and says, "I made a difference for that one." That's what I think this does. It makes a difference for that kid. If we can help that many more, I have served my purpose in this legislature, Dean. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. But like I said, we have the district attorneys who can talk to some of the legal questions. Tammy can share her story and sort of the genesis of what sort of got us going on this. But I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Thank you for your passion. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And respect it. Rhonda Kuykendall, did you want to bring up the family at this point? Or you want to hear from the DA?
Should come up
Sir?
together. If the three of those could come up, Paige, Tammy, and Judy, I would appreciate that very much, sir.
Okay. Those witnesses come forward.
We do not.
We have not filled, we don't have cards on them, so if you'll see that they fill out the cards when we complete.
We'll make sure they have.
Yeah, don't worry about it. State your name, and we thank you for being here, but state
Thank
your name and who you represent, obviously.
My name is Paige Williams, and I am here representing the Dallas County Criminal District Attorney, John Creuzot. And on this bill, I am also representing myself. We are in support of Senate Bill 129. I am the former district attorney of the 97th District of Montague County. I still reside in Montague County. The current DA, Casey Hall, who's with us today, and I started this journey 10 years ago, along with our investigator, Chris Hamilton, who is also here today, to find Caleb. What began as a missing persons case between my office, the Nocona Police Department, the Montague County Sheriff, and the Texas Rangers quickly spiraled into a horrific timeline almost 30 years in the making. The investigation uncovered multiple victims. Some were my own schoolmates. They were assaulted when we were in junior high and high school. For those that have been in this body and worked in criminal justice for the past 40 years, you know in the 1980s, we didn't talk about crimes against children. And we sure didn't talk about those crimes in which a male perpetrates against a boy. During our investigation, Casey and I hit brick wall after brick wall, unable to prosecute a known perpetrator due to statute of limitations, lack of evidence. When Casey took the position of district attorney, her office continued to search for Caleb and continued to find evidence against this known perpetrator. Almost 8 years later, Casey and her office was able to find proof of an actual crime against Caleb. Yet, once again, her office was unable to prosecute the case because of a statute of limitations issue for child pornography, and she had to turn the case over to the federal government for prosecution. You all have worked tirelessly to update and modify the statutes that increase offense levels and the statute of limitations for prosecution of crimes against children. You all have all helped change the narrative in a way that we talk about these crimes and prosecute them. As a citizen, a mother, and a prosecutor, I thank you. But there's still more work to be done. Child pornography is the last offense against a child that needs to be updated. In 1989, this body changed child pornography from a Class A misdemeanor to a third-degree felony with a maximum penalty of 10 years incarceration. It has not been changed since. Caleb's law seeks to provide higher sentencing up front based on the amount of child pornography the perpetrator possesses, including up to a first-degree felony. SB 129 recognizes that these perpetrators no longer have physical photographs in their possession for personal use, but have terabytes of digital images to share. SB 129 also adds some additional enhancements that we now see in child pornography cases, such as when the visual material depicts a child younger than 10, or the perpetrator receives state funds for the care of children. The changes in Caleb's law, actually, it's my understanding that there may be a committee substitute, and we would ask Senator Springer to remove Section 3.03, which in the original filing that changes the stacking provision, we would like to remove that because it inadvertently denied us the ability to stack these offenses as prosecutors. And we would also respectfully request that this committee substitute have a statute of limitations provision increasing the statute of limitations to 7 years, the same as exploitation of a child for the possession of child pornography.
Okay.
The changes in Caleb's law brings the possession of child pornography in line with other measures this body has set in place to protect our most precious resource, Texas children. None of us involved can bring Caleb home to his mother, but with your help, we can honor him as the person who was the catalyst that ended 30 years of torment on my community.
Thank you. State your name and who you represent.
Thank you, Dean Whitmire and committee members. My name is Judy Price, and I'm an assistant district attorney for the 97th Judicial District of Archer, Clay, and Montague counties. I'd also like to thank Senator Springer for filing Senate Bill 129, and I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank my boss, Casey Hall, for supporting my work on this important piece of legislation. I've been prosecuting crimes against children cases since 2015, and in a few minutes you're going to hear from Tammy Dill, Caleb's mom, and the horrific events that unfolded in our jurisdiction and the evil committed against her son, Caleb. As a prosecutor, I've seen firsthand the need for the changes that Senate Bill 129 provides. As Paige pointed out, we've come a long way in passing laws to protect our vulnerable children. We can easily use terms such as human trafficking or sexual assault of a child, but the two words, child pornography, are still two words that our society hesitates to say. Because to say them means that we must recognize that this crime happens. Senate Bill 129 is one of those bills that you cannot shy away from, despite its terminology, when you hear what the bill does and why it's needed. Our current child pornography laws are one of the last crimes against children laws that need to be updated and strengthened to protect these vulnerable victims. And the current child pornography statute needs to be updated to align with our current technology and the access that it creates for online predators. We're no longer prosecuting an individual with a collection of photographs. We're prosecuting individuals with terabytes of images. And it was just last month that 34 North Texas law enforcement agencies, they rescued 28 children. They seized terabytes of images, and they arrested 59 perpetrators in a massive child pornography investigation that spanned multiple counties. And think about that story that ran about the refuge in Texas and the heinous acts that those children endured. And foster parents who receive state funds from our great state of Texas. and offend on children. But it's that age-old argument that having or sharing child pornography isn't as bad as committing the sexual abuse upon the child itself. And that is absolutely absurd. As a prosecutor who has spent most of my tenure prosecuting crimes against children, it's disturbing to hear that, and it's discouraging when you're trying to seek justice against these pedophiles. Ladies and gentlemen, I would ask that you look at your watches right now, if you have one on, or you look at your phone, and you look at the time. Because children everywhere right at this exact moment are being sexually abused, exploited, sold, filmed, and all of those acts are being shared with other pedophiles across the world. A dark world that exists
Okay.
because there's an entire industry devoted to it. And each time each one of those children that's being sexually and physically abused, and it's filmed, and it's being shared, that child is being re-victimized. Because as you all know, nothing's really ever deleted from the internet. So when will it stop?
I don't want to interrupt you. Save unlimited amount of time for the family, and I don't want to limit you to 2 minutes, but you're being a little redundant from the first DA, so be mindful of our time, because the bill's in good shape, and I really want to give unlimited amount of time to the family.
Thank you.
I'm not stopping you, absolutely. I'm just saying when you wind up.
Yes, Dean Whitmire. Caleb's Law is a heavy-hitting hammer up front to deter these monsters from hurting our children, and then having the audacity to share the hurt that they put those children through via the internet and phones. And I would just like to say that we can never stop. It's our job, it's our duty, and it's our God-given obligation to protect our society's most vulnerable, our children. And I'd ask that you strongly support Senate Bill 129 and take a stand against pedophiles everywhere. Let's tell our future generations now and forever that we will not stand for this, and we will prosecute child pornography to the highest extent that our laws provide. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being
I want
here.
to clap. That was fabulous.
Oh, great job. Great
Be a
job.
spokesperson for children.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Whitmire and committee members, and thank you, Senator Springer, for filing this bill. My name is Tammy Deal, and I'm here to testify in support of Senate Bill 129, Caleb's Law. The month of March is a particularly difficult time for me and my family. We celebrated my son Caleb's 26th birthday last week on March 15th, and next week on March 30th will be the 8th year since he disappeared 2 weeks after his 18th birthday in 2015, making the timing of this hearing particularly bittersweet for us. When I was first approached about this bill, the thought of it being named after my son inspired mixed emotions. I was initially tearful and proud that Caleb could be forever remembered for having something good done in his name. On the other side, I was hesitant. I wasn't sure how I felt about my fearless, very masculine, beautiful son being remembered as the poster child for child pornography. I ultimately decided that it didn't matter how I felt about it. What was important was, what would Caleb himself think about it? What would he want me to do? While Caleb certainly always seemed intent on trying to prove how tough and brave he was also naturally considerate, generous, kind, and protective. I imagined my son's own thoughts in response to this important decision. I imagined him offering the following words to me, through me, to this committee. I believe this is what Caleb would say. He would say, "Mama, you need to support and do anything and everything you can if it can in any way help protect other young people from being abused and violated like I was. I was so confused about what was happening with my body when I was younger, and a person who knew how to manipulate and take advantage of those feelings did to me what no child should have to endure. He convinced me that what he was doing was okay, that it was good for me, that I could never tell anyone because they wouldn't understand, because they would think that there was something wrong with me. Later, he told me that if I told anyone what had happened, he would hurt my family. As I grew older, I began to understand how wrong it was and decided that I needed to stop him from doing it to others. That is why I gathered the evidence that you found in the house so that I could prove what he had done, that he stopped me before I could. I know you wish you could have saved me, that you didn't know. And I was good at keeping it to myself because I was ashamed and scared. Wow. That's right. Wow, what happened to me was so much more than inappropriate pictures taken. This bill is a big step in the right direction in stopping crimes against children. Please continue to remember me and let this help you all feel like a greater good can be the result of what I went through. What you all have gone through as a result of one man's ugliness. When Caleb first disappeared, we had no idea what he had been through. We had no idea what had been done to him, and still to this day find the terrible truth of it hard to believe. To accept the defeating fact that the perpetrator in my son's case somehow managed to enact his crimes entirely without suspicion for so many years. I myself was naive regarding the sheer volume of sex crimes that are committed against children every day. Since that time, my eyes have been opened. My heart breaks over and over for the countless innocent youth whose lives have been similarly devastated. Along with the benefit that this bill could have in protecting children, I also have very selfish reasons for wanting this bill to get passed. Hopefully, having this law passed in Caleb's name will not only keep his memory alive, but our hope will always be that there is someone else out there who knows something and they will finally decide it's time to come forward and tell us where Caleb is. To quote the words of a dear friend and schoolmate of Caleb's that speaks for all of us, I hate so much that you're the one that brought this law into effect, but I'm also so proud to know that you and your family could be helping so many other victims now. Because of you, Caleb, others will be saved and heard. From the bottom of my heart, I want to thank Paige Williams, Judy Price, Senator Springer, and any others involved in putting this bill together, and for honoring Caleb by naming it after him. And thank you, Chair Whitmore, and this committee.
Assure you that your being here today and having the courage to come forward will have a great impact on this legislation in this body. So thank you for being here. Any questions of our witnesses? If not, thank you for each helping us pass this legislation. Bettencourt.
Thank you.
Senator Bettencourt.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very good. We have a large list of support. Thank you for being here. Rhonda Kuykendall, have I called you yet? Rhonda? Come down and tell us who you are and who you represent. And try to limit it to 2 minutes. Try to limit it to
Yes, sir.
2 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Whitmire, committee members. My name is Rhonda Kuykendall. I chair the Fort Bend County District Attorney's Human Trafficking Community Awareness Team. I serve the state of Texas on the Texas Human Trafficking Survivor Leader Council, and I work as the anti-child trafficking consultant to Texas CASA. I'm also a survivor of a child pornography ring. My trafficker was convicted 4 times, 3 different states. He was convicted twice in Texas. His charges include compelling prostitution, and also sexual performance by a child. What's interesting is he was never convicted of any pornography charge. We know that there's a direct relationship between pornography and sex trafficking. It is a gateway for buyers of sex. Sex trafficking victims a lot of times are video recorded without their knowledge or even their consent. Sextortion is a very common grooming tool involved in sex trafficking, and pornography is used many times to advertise sex buying. Now we have live webcams. Those live webcams are turned into videos that are posted on multiple different platforms, so one victimization can be shared over multiple years, over and over, and there's no telling how many eyes have seen it. The previous district attorney did mention Operation Janice, which was in Dallas. It netted about 59 pornography-related charges, and I will skip all my details on that because she already did it. I will end with Senate Bill 129 will also make it to where if you are involved in pornography and you are at a residential treatment center, then it is a first-degree felony. It makes me wonder if this bill were already enacted when Refuge Ranch happened, what would be the difference when an employee there took 2 girls, nude photographs, and she sold them. So with that, Senate Bill 129 is a good bill, and I recommend its passage. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Bettencourt.
Thank you for your testimony. This makes me really angry. Okay, so I want to make sure that we're not missing anything on a criminal penalty that we should be at. I mean, when you get to first degree, that's pretty much, you're ratcheted up to the top. Is there any area on this bill, because like Senator Springer, I want to throw as many, sand dollars, starve everything back into the ocean that we can.
From reviewing the bill, the previous version, what it is right now, it looks like it was like 3 strikes before you got to first-degree felony. Now it's dependent upon how many images that you possess, so that's good. In the Operation Janus, there were multiple perpetrators that had thousands and thousands of images. There was another perpetrator that had so many videos that you can't describe.
No, these are terabytes of library files that are just despicable. So, Dean, I'm mad enough to rocket this bill to the moon at this point.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Paige Williams, Dallas County Criminal District Court.
Page testified.
Paige, okay, fine. What I'm going to recommend at this time, members, there's probably close to 50 witnesses signed in support, mostly district attorney, law enforcement. I've gone through carefully, no victims that have signed a card. So I want to pursue passage of the bill and agreement. Everybody will read this.
We'll get that committee sub in, Senator Whitmire, and I appreciate this committee, and I would love to touch base with Senator Huffman and the lawyers in here to make sure that we get it exactly to do what we all want to do. So thank you for helping.
Pending this morning?
Yes, sir, thank you.
Okay, so the chair will leave Senate Bill 129 pending for allow the process to work, and clerk will read the support into the record after we complete the rest of our bills. Is that okay? Thank you. Okay, we have another really important piece of legislation, as they all are, but Senator Middleton, Benton Court, y'all have catalytic converter theft legislation. Senator Alvarado, I know y'all been in communication, working together to roll them into a bill that will be a tough piece of legislation, will honor one of our fallen heroes. So at this time, Senator Middleton, why don't you, since you're not on the committee, if you'll tell us the nature of your bill and your cooperation with making the senators come together with one bill. So thank you, and the chair recognizes you.
Thank you, Dean. Thank you, Chairman. I've been working with Senator Alvarado and Senator Betancourt, and actually this bill, Senate Bill 432, is very similar to their legislation. So we're working on combining them all into Senator Alvarado's bill. And this is about catalytic converter theft. And that is not a nonviolent crime. That is not a victimless crime. We have Harris County Sheriff's Deputy Darren Almendarez's family here today. And that shows you what's really happening here. People are being killed. This is an issue that is wreaking havoc in our communities. It's wreaking havoc in public safety. People are losing their lives. And I've been working with the Motor Vehicle Crime Prevention Authority. That's our statewide task force on recovering stolen automobiles and also stolen automobile parts. This is a top priority of theirs. Thank you, Senator Huffman, and also Representative Bonin for making sure the MVCPA is funded in the budget. It is. They do really important work on this issue. And basically what Senate Bill 432 does is it criminalizes possession of catalytic converters. We know that there's been about a 1,200% increase in catalytic converter theft since 2019. Obviously, that's because of the rare metals involved like platinum, palladium, rhodium, and they can be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars per ounce. And this bill, like Senator Alvarado and Betancourt's bill, creates a presumption of theft for being in possession of the property that contains catalytic converter removed from a vehicle. And that presumption will allow law enforcement to immediately take action when that catalytic converter is suspected to be stolen. That's one of the big issues now is that it is not a crime to possess a stolen catalytic converter because it's so difficult to prove. So this creates that presumption that makes it easier for law enforcement. It creates a criminal penalty and increases it to a state jail felony for possession of a stolen catalytic converter. It also has protections in special circumstances for individuals that own the vehicle that the catalytic converter was removed from. It also has protections for businesses that are regularly and in good faith possession of catalytic converters in their normal course and operation of business, such as repair shops, metal recycling entities, licensed vehicle dealers, automobile wreckage and salvage yards. Of course, those are exempted from the bill because that is in their normal course of business to possess these. And finally, an individual who possesses a catalytic converter while performing a duty within the scope of their employment will not be prosecuted. And with that, Chairman, I will yield for questions and yield to my colleagues on their great bills, too, that will hold criminals accountable and address this issue that we've got that has really gotten out of control and compromised public safety in Texas.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, and I'm sure you're familiar, as this committee, as we had a very productive hearing in Houston searching for solutions that you and your colleagues are proposing today. In fact, we applauded the City of Houston's ordinance that made it within the City of Houston. If you have it in possession, you are assumed a thief. So thank you. I actually drafted legislation without respect for Senator Alvarado and her constituent, Officer Almendarez. I yielded to her sponsorship. We just got to get it done, and y'all are showing how the system should work. No pride of authorship. Let's just get it done. So thank you for being here. And Senator Bettencourt, you've been an active member on this committee pursuing this as well, so Chair recognizes you.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. To follow on Senator Middleton's comments, what the Senate Bill 465 did was just make it really clear that if you're in possession of a catalytic converter and you're not in the normal supply chain, you've committed a crime, because that's what we've seen. You know, Senator Alvarado has lost a great deputy, Deputy Darren. He was just trying to stop, somebody from stealing a catalytic converter on his truck, and they shot him. Now, this is the problem. What we're seeing is that criminal rings are moving from ATM, they're moving into pulsar controls, they're moving into, catalytic converters, because that's where the money is. And, Senator Middleton's correct, Dean. By the time you recycle palladium, platinum and ruthenium, you're going to make some money. And that's what all this is about to the crooks, is making money. But what it costs are lives. And this is, Dean, you said it right, this is how this Senate works. This is a deliberative body, probably the most deliberative body in the United States. And what happened last week was we all got together on the floor because people have been working on a committee substitute to combine all three bills. Because we don't care whose name is on the bill, we want it to fix the problem. What gets measured gets fixed. And this, and I'm going to quote Houston Police Chief Troy Finder from your committee hearing, Dean, in Houston, because this is where he put a finger on it. The city experienced an increase in property crimes in 2022. Thefts of catalytic converters by an organized crime ring and thefts of firearms not properly secured in vehicles drove up the reported auto theft crimes by 11% in 1 year. All crimes on auto theft driven up by 11% in 1 year. And so with that, Dean, I will yield back and be happy to be co-author of Senator Alvarado's legislation.
Thank you, and well said. So I'm going to leave Senate Bill 432 by Middleton pending and 465 by Bettencourt pending because they've become co-sponsors along with the rest of us. I would assume, Senator Alvarado, you'll get surely 31 co-sponsors, 30 co-sponsors. I'm going to recognize you at this time. And thank you for your hard work. And members, this does affect everyone, and it's certainly, as evidence shows, it's not a nonviolent act. It's not a theft. If you try to stop these folks, as Mr. Almendarez, Officer Almendarez, lost his life, I had a son-in-law with a 6 and 8-year-old grandsons. They go into Antoine's on TC Jester on a Sunday morning,
Sure.
come out, and they've lost their catalytic converter. I fear if they'd have been 10 minutes earlier, there would have been a confrontation. So these are vicious thieves, organized crime, and they will take any measure to get these valuable minerals. So the thrust of the legislation is if you've got it, the presumption is that you're a thief, because you shouldn't have more than one, shouldn't even have one that's not operating on your vehicle. So, Senator Alvarado, thank you for your leadership, and the chair recognizes you.
Thank you, Chairman Whitmire, and I can't thank you enough for the work you've done on this issue last year when we held that hearing. It was successful. You shined a light on it, and thank you for working with me and serving as a joint author. To my colleagues, Senators Middleton and Bettencourt, a big thank you for working with our office. And Senator Bettencourt, I know you were at the hearing. You've been engaged in the issue since the interim. Senator Middleton, I know you're new to the Senate, but you jumped right on this issue, and I saw that it was one of the first bills that you filed. So thank you both for joining us and working with us on one bill. Almost a year ago today, Harris County Sheriff Deputy Darren Almendares was shot and killed when he interrupted 3 men attempting to steal catalytic converter from his personal vehicle outside of a grocery store. His wife, Flor, was with him at that time, and she's here today. Flor, thank you for being here. I know this must be extremely difficult, and we're going to hear from you in a bit. Deputy Almendares' story is one instance of a vicious trend in our state. Catalytic converter theft is now an organized, violent crime. Last session, Chairman Leach and I passed House Bill 4110 that created a regulatory system for catalytic converters, and it did help to reduce some crime. But we know that the current levels, we need a more comprehensive criminal justice and regulatory solution to further the crackdown on these crimes, to prevent more thefts and punish offenders. Mr. Chairman, we do have a committee substitute.
Okay, let Senator Alvarado lays out committee substitute for Senate Bill 224.
Thank you.
And let me go ahead and adopt it. Is there objection to the adoption? Senator Flores moves the adoption of committee substitute for Senate Bill 224. Is there objection? Chair is none. It's before us. If you will explain the difference.
Sure. Thank you. I want to touch on 3 elements in this bill. It creates a presumption that someone in possession of one or more catalytic converters unlawfully obtained them unless it can be proven that those in possession are the rightful owners of the converters. Number 2, it specifically lists catalytic converters in the theft statute, creating a state jail felony for their theft. Adding converters to the penal code's value ladder will allow for the value of these thefts to be aggregated together, a useful tool to combat crime rings. Third, it adds a penalty enhancement to allow prosecutors to charge someone with the next highest offense level if the theft was in possession of a firearm. The committee substitute reflects additional criminal and regulatory provisions to provide more tools to law enforcement and prosecutors. It keeps, of course, all the elements of the original bill. It also clarifies who can buy and sell converters by closing the business-to-business loophole, and requires meticulous tracking and reporting of the converter transactions between businesses. It also creates a criminal offense related to the unauthorized possession of a catalytic converter that has been removed from a vehicle, and allows converter thefts to be prosecuted under the criminal mischief statute. Thank you, Senator Bettencourt. We took that from your bill. Finally, it authorizes collection of an additional dollar collected from the motor vehicle insurance policies for the Motor Vehicle Crime Prevention Authority, specifically for coordinated regulatory and law enforcement activities geared towards detection and prevention of catalytic thefts. We do have some fine expert witnesses. I want to thank law enforcement, prosecutors that we've worked with. We've been holding stakeholder meetings since, I think, early summertime. You'll hear from folks in the industry, and as I mentioned, you will hear from Deputy Armendariz' wife, Flor.
Very good. I think, Ms. Armendariz, I'm going to let the law enforcement speak and let you, I think you would have an opportunity to kind of put a face on it in the pain that it brings. But let me get my technical enforcement folks first. Robin Foster, Harris County Deputies Organization. And let's try best we can the witnesses 2 minutes. That doesn't apply to the family, of course, but this bill's in really good shape. I want to emphasize one more time the cooperation of all the senators, not only coming together, but the bipartisanship that's displayed here this morning is very, very healthy, too. State your name and who you represent.
Yes. My name is Robin Foster, and I am with the Harris County Deputies Organization, Fraternal Order of Police, Lodge 39. We represent deputies, officers, constables, and jailers, as well as other law enforcement personnel in the Harris County region. This bill is something Harris County desperately needs and something that will benefit all of Texas. It finds a common sense solution to a problem endemic throughout Texas. The theft of catalytic converters is a crime that takes minutes to execute, but leads to thousands of dollars in damage that cannot be mitigated. It currently is a criminal industry with very little risk but very high reward. It is increasingly a violent crime as thieves are using guns as part of their criminal enterprise. This violence took one of our own deputies last year, Deputy Darren Armendariz. He was a good man that loved his family and was dedicated to the service of the citizens of Harris County. His murder was shocking and depressed the morale of HCSO. Many deputies feel no matter how hard they work to arrest these criminals, nothing can be done. No community should be torn apart by violent crime, and that is why HCDO FOP 39 is glad to be here to support this common sense real solution. We'd like to thank Senator Alvarado and Senator Whitmire for introducing this needed legislation, as well as the other senators who have worked on these bills. Their offices worked extremely hard to find this solution, and we thank you for your attention to this matter.
Very good. Thank you for being here. Sergeant Fred Parsons. Y'all try to limit your remarks to 2 minutes. I'm not timing it, but tell us
Chairman, Senators,
how
thank you.
important it is.
I'm Sergeant Fred Parsons, Harris County Sheriff's Office. I'm over the metal theft unit, and for the last 3 years and 3 months, 24/7, that's all I've dealt with is catalytic converters, and it's a nightmare. Our violent crime unit, our auto theft unit have all been involved, thousands and thousands of man hours. We know who most of our crooks are. We know who the cutters are. We know who the buyers are. We have no teeth. We have no way to go get them unless we catch them or unless they cross state lines and we get the feds involved. So it's a huge problem. 3 years and 3 months, over 10,000 victims, $25 million in damages. And that's not counting O2 sensors and gas lines cut, hours of work missed, things like that. So it's a horrible, horrible crime, and this will help us immensely.
Quick question. Do you ever arrest them and they make bail and go out and do it again?
Generally the next day, yes.
Generally the next day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
For that question. Senator.
Yeah, part of the testimony, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Part of the testimony we heard in Houston that under present law you would have and catch drivers going from Texas, Houston to Louisiana, but you couldn't do anything about it, even though you knew that they were stolen.
Correct. Unless we get the feds involved and they can prove that, and we have proven, we had over $1 million worth of converters in a trailer one time that went over state lines, and we found that it turned more into a weapons case because all of these guys are violent. All of them carry guns. Their social medias, when they post things, they all have guns. They're all gang members. They're just bad people.
So this bill will address that problem?
100%, yes, sir.
Just like carrying drugs. If you're in possession of a kilo of cocaine, that's a crime.
Right.
The other issue that we heard was there were warehouses, if you will, where they would store all the stolen catalytic converters.
They were doing that. Now they move them because we're on to them. And so they'll post a picture of a cat on their social media, which means they're buying catalytic converters. And then they'll start sending each other messages where they're going to meet and where they're going to buy. So it's a cat and mouse game is really what it is, with us chasing them, catching them. And,
So this would address that issue.
yes, sir.
Well, and you need to tell your coworkers, if this bill is not the final version, we'll be back next session. And Senator Huffman is addressing the convenience to them of getting out the next day on a bond. That's going to come to a screeching halt. So I know it's impacting the morale of the officers I speak to, and the public is frightened. I get calls, and someone's coming out of a business. Actually, I have a constituent who was doing family counseling for their teenage child. They come out on 290 in Tidwell, no way to get home. They live in Cypress. It's just amazing the impact this has across our region in the state of Texas.
It's so prolific that Toyotas, for example, 4-month back order. So you're without a car for
Now,
4
families
months.
don't have a second car.
No, sir.
People we represent. And the cost, expense, the danger of intervention when you attempt to protect your property is just exposing everyone. So tell the officers it's being addressed. This is going to make a difference. And if it's not the final, we'll come back next session. And also the bail issue is being addressed. So thank you for being here.
Yes, sir.
Dean, quick comment. if I
Yes,
could.
sir, Senator.
And the problem is, with these popular models, a lot of people have been hit more than once.
Correct.
Right, because you could have a Toyota Tundra, and they'll post a picture of a cat, and then people will basically place an order, they'll go out and steal, and they'll steal again. And, and so my message to here, Dean, I think Senator Alvarado, you agree with this, there's folklore that cats have 9 lives. Well, after this bill passed, they've got 1. Okay? And they do it once, they're going to have real trouble. Okay? So that's the message we need to get out.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Jason Hester, Texas Department of Public Safety as a resource witness. Taka Termino, catalytic converters, oral testimony, legislative director for New Brownsville. Who is that? I butchered the name. TCHD, Texas Automatic.
It's Chad.
Oh, I'm sorry. State your, I didn't see your name here. State your name, who you represent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee. My name is Chad Terramina. I represent the Texas Automotive Recyclers Association.
You got about 2 minutes.
Yes, sir. I'll be brief. I just want to educate and kind of chime in on what we do, where our catalytic converters come from. We buy end-of-life vehicles from salvage pools, storage lot facilities. We're licensed dismantlers, dismantling up to 125 cars a week. On average, we have about 3 catalytic converters per car. So there is a lot of different catalytic converters that are on the cars, whether it be on the engine or the exhaust. We do cut. I know we talked in Houston about cut catalytic converters. They are welded to these exhausts, so we cut them up, put them in Gaylord boxes, and sell them to the recyclers, the metal recyclers. So our record keeping is very strict and thorough. Getting back to our catalytic converters, we do store, arm, and alarm these catalytic converters at our facilities. So our members do have cameras on them. We have electric fences, so a lot of our catalytic converters are armed. Unfortunately, we've had some incidents last year, mainly with delivery trucks within our industry. So not only do they hit the vehicles, but they do the bigger vehicles as well with the bigger type catalytic converters. So we did get hit at.
Are you in support of the legislation?
Yes, sir. I'm in support of 224. Yes, sir.
We appreciate your industry if you do it right.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I appreciate what we're doing and where we're going on this, because it is a problem. And again, I just want to kind of chime in on what we do and where we get our catalytic converters, but ultimately, where they leave us is the metal recyclers, and then they do their part as well as far as record keeping and security as well. So I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
No questions, just do it right. Thank you.
Sir.
Steve Resden. Who did I miss? Did I give you one that wanted to testify? Who's that? All right. State your name, Steve, in about 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name's Steve Bresnan. I'm here on behalf of PGM of Texas, the largest recycler of catalytic converters in North America. Very proud to have been allowed to work with your offices on behalf of PGM that's taken a leadership role to develop this legislation. Dean, you've been here longer than I have, but I'm really tired of bills that have to get named by people because of really heinous acts in order to put an end to those acts. In this case, a man was killed for a car part. It's ridiculous. I think that the structure of the bill gets to the organized crime aspect. You've heard about the criminal justice aspects of it. There are some gaps in the regulatory system, frankly, that need to be filled in. We do not affect what happened, what House Bill 4110 did. So the solo individual that shows up at our facilities, they're going to have the same treatment as they did before. This gets to the business to business and wipes out the ability for anybody to insinuate volumes of stolen catalytic converters into the regulatory system. We may have some work yet to do, sir, but we've come a very long way, and we're very proud, and we're not stopping until it gets done.
Okay.
I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Paul Bettencourt, Senator.
You know, it can't speak for everybody, but Steve, you did a great job on this, and having the legitimate industry players there makes a big, difference, because we're really trying to sort the wheat from the chaff. But where you're right, when people are dying over car parts, it's well past time to do something about it. And these are organized criminal rings. This is hundreds of millions of dollars worth of theft, and it's huge business. And that's why when they get out, they're back at it the next day, because that's how they make their money or make their living.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you, Steve.
My 2 minutes won't allow me to thank everybody in my list
No.
who's been participating.
There's a lot of work gone into this.
Goes without saying.
And we're going to monitor it very carefully.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mel Wright? Mel, you've got 1 minute. This bill's in good shape. And
1 minute going to zero.
yeah,
Thank you.
because I understand the recycling business is involved, and y'all have worked with us, but we want to get on down the road with the
Okay.
punishment.
Well, thank you for letting me be here, Chairman. My name is Mel Wright, second generation owner, Wright Scrap Metal, Beaumont, Texas. Been in the metal recycling business since 1968. I also serve as the current president of the Recycling Council of Texas, a trade association representing hundreds of Texas companies that are metal recycling entities, or MREs, regulated by the Department of Public Safety. I'm here in support of DPS and the MREs in the state in trying to resolve this issue. We support increasing penalties for unlawful possession of catalytic converters and empowering law enforcement with the tools they need to stop the crime. MREs have become a first line of defense for stopping metal theft, including catalytic converters. The state of Texas has adopted measures to combat this theft, including last session's legislation to gather more information about catalytic converters sold to regulated MREs. Since the passage of that legislation, catalytic converter theft has increased. Once again, this bill creates additional regulation on licensed MREs, but may not solve the problem. Following new regulation put into place last session for licensed MREs, nearly 75% of MREs no longer buy catalytic converters from the general public, as current law makes it difficult. MREs support our continued compliance with catalytic converter tracking, reporting requirements, and even support additional requirements for business-to-business transactions which are not currently required. However, if we're going to crack down on this crime, all non-MREs in the business of catalytic converters should be subject to the same regulation, tracking, and reporting requirements. Only companies registered with the DPS, compliant with DPS reporting, should be able to legally purchase, sell old detached catalytic converters so that law enforcement can accurately track the products to the fullest extent possible.
That's fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Just
you.
Do it right.
Do it right.
The bottom line.
And I'll play by the same rules.
Thank you for being here. Anyone else like to testify for and against? And I don't believe so, except now, Ms. Almendares, if you'll be willing to testify, I saved you for last, so you could see the kind of support that we're here, and we're no nonsense about this panel. And if this doesn't complete the mission that we're looking for, we'll be back. So thank you for having the courage to be here, and we respect you greatly. So
Thank you.
obviously, the time is unlimited for you to put a face in the pain that this crime brings on Texas families.
Thank you, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to.
Yeah.
This is the first time I tell my story.
Pull the mic a little closer, and would you like a sip of water? You want a little sip of water right
No,
there in front?
I'm good.
Okay,
Okay.
take your time. Take a deep breath.
Deputy Darren Almendares is my husband.
Take your time. I know it's hard. And in fact, if you'd like one of the ladies that came with you, or this good-looking officer right here to join you, our time is your time.
This is my daughter, and this is Deputy Javier Salinas, one of my husband's best friends. That night, for whatever reason, he wanted to go with me to the store. We don't shop there. We just happened to decide to go there. While he was working on a case himself from the auto theft division, and for a second, I thought about letting him stay home and ask my daughter to go with me. But he wanted to go with me, so we left. Coming out, again, I go to court at least 2 times a month since that day. So every time I go to court, I remember things. My brain's been in a fog, but I remember things. So as I'm speaking to you, I'm remembering things.
Yes, ma'am.
So when we're coming out, all I remember him saying, "Wait, babe, just wait right here, just a few feet from me." The next thing I hear, "Run." I couldn't run. I'll walk fast. But this whole time, we're just looking at each other. I was looking at him. And just that image of me turning around, hearing the gunshot. But I didn't think he got shot because he was such a brave man. He was so careful about everything. We would play these scenarios. If anything happened, babe, I need you to run, and I need you to hide, and I need you to call 911. Never in a million years did I think that, because he was such a smart man. Turn around, and all I hear is like, call 911. Walking around. He's just walking around. I ran to him, walked towards him, and I ran into the 3 criminals face to face in the vehicle. Now I ask myself, and I shouldn't, why didn't they shoot me? We were just feet from each other when they were trying to get away. I see my husband. He approaches me. We hug. Don't want to go into too much details. But I know when we held onto each other, he just told me he couldn't breathe and that he loved me. We kissed, and that was his last breath. I had to live with that. All memories. So every time I go to court, and the first time I went to a bond hearing, when all three suspects came out, I used to think about their mothers, had the pain of losing their kid because they were lost. But the moment that I saw them, there was no remorse. They were smiling at each other in court. And I had never felt hate towards anybody. And I learned about hate that day. Every month, it's 3 of them. Every month I have to go to court. Sometimes I face them, sometimes I don't. But I'm there, and I'm not going to give up. I'm not. Yes, it has taken a toll on myself, health-wise. I stand in the mirror and I look at myself. It's no longer me. That's not the person my husband fell in love with. But like his words, I'm a fighter. I'm very resilient. And I'm not giving up. So I would do whatever it takes. If it's the last thing that I do, to honor my husband and to do whatever it takes for any law to pass. I know they are charged capital murder, 2 of them. And the youngest was 17. That 17-year-old, I work in Acres Home, public school. Well, about 2-3 weeks prior to that, he was trying to enroll in my school. I had his file on my desk.
Well,
Okay? The raids that they did after that, driving to school at 6 in the morning, I saw helicopters and lights. Didn't know what it was on my way to school. Turns out I saw it in the news. Another raid that connected my husband to that. So I didn't give up. People asked me, don't go back to work. That's a bad area. I'm not giving up. And I will not give up. My husband would not want me to give up. Like I said, every day. You asked, Senator Huffman, do these people that get caught and they get released the next day? I went to court yesterday. Okay? Before a case was heard, there was another case. 2 young kids. Catalytic converters. I sat there front row. When I heard it was catalytic converter theft, I sat there. My heart started racing. 2 of them, younger ones, just looked. They had priors. They were out on PR bond. When they were doing that, they found 5 catalytic converters in their cars. They had guns. And guess what? The judge slapped on the wrist. That was a slap in my face. To reset the case for 3 weeks and let him free. Speechless. I was so upset. What are the odds? Me sitting there and seeing what's happening. There's nothing. They're just out and about. How many more people? And the worst thing is that I had to witness my husband get murdered. This month, the 18th, it was our anniversary. 4 days before that, we were in Galveston celebrating our anniversary and planning our wedding ceremony. And I get nothing. There's nothing. Nothing but memories. I hate coming home to our home. I hate coming home because he's not there. I hate driving the truck because I have that fear. It's a Toyota Tundra. Somebody volunteered to put a cover on the catalytic converters. But my fear is that every time I step up, I stand there and first I freeze before I walk towards the truck. I don't know who's under there. That's a chance that I'm taking. But I shouldn't be living in fear. because I am not going to give up. I'm not. So my husband gave up his life for me, and not just for me, for the community. 2 weeks before my husband's death, the same guy shot somebody else. He survived. They had no remorse.
Let me just let you know, we're not going to give up either. And you being here today, your words are better than any words we can express up here. But we feel we feel your pain, and we're going to honor your husband. I mean, it's a small token to name a bill in his honor, but it'll continue to motivate other stakeholders to do everything they can. And this bill might not be the permanent fix, but it's a giant step forward. It's going to hold people accountable. And what really disturbs me, though, to hear your court experiences. Senator Huffman and this panel, we're doing everything we can. In fact, I've got a bill to move murders, capital murders, to the front of the line, and I will commit to following up and seeing the status of your husband's killers' cases. And a sad note, we've got some judges who are independent, and sometimes they're not subject to guidance. But we're going to do our damnedest to hold those people accountable. So thank you for being here. It'll make a tremendous difference. Thank your daughter and your husband's colleague. So we do a lot of important things in this committee, but I can't think of anything we're going to do today or this session that's more important than this. It's not only taking your loved one, but it's we all feel exposed. And you're right, for you to say now you even fear that it could be a repeat. So thank you for being here. That's the best I can express to you. Senator Bettencourt.
I have to ask, what judge did this?
We'll get to the bottom of it.
I ain't waiting.
Yeah.
Okay.
What court number do you know?
177, and I know the judge's name.
Yeah, what's his name? Her name? What?
His name is Robert Johnson.
Not the first time I've heard that name, and it's never in a positive context.
Anyway, anything else? You're very, very courageous and strong to be here today, and thank you.
Thank you so much.
And you give us the energy we need, and we're not going to give up. Senator Alvarado, thank you. I know you were close to the family as we talked, and thank you for honoring our fallen hero with your piece of legislation.
Thank you, Chairman Whitmire. And again, thank you for your involvement in this. I know you've had a chance to visit with the family prior to this last year. And thank all of you who have signed on to be co-authors and ask for your support today. And thank you, Florida, for being here.
Thank you. And thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And I'm not giving up.
No,
I'm not.
don't give up.
Never give
Get
up.
determined as you are.
None of us are going to give up.
No, we're not giving up.
She's never going to give up.
And we are going to review that court action. We can't undo the tragedy, but we can damn sure get involved going forward. So just put us down as your allies.
Appreciate you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
Members, I got numerous cards in support of all three of the catalytic converter bills. With your permission, we'll let the clerk to read that into the record after we hear the bills. We've got one more significant bill, if y'all will allow me, I think. Oh, that's right. What we're going to do, members, Senator Flores moves that we adopt committee substitute for Senate Bill 224. As objections, here is none. Now Senator Flores moves that committee substitute for Senate Bill 224 be reported back to full Senate with a favorable recommendation. Clerk, call the roll.
Whitmire?
Yes.
Flores? Aye. Hinojosa?
Aye.
Huffman?
Aye.
Bettencourt?
Aye.
King?
Aye.
6-0.
I mean,
6-0.
6 ayes, no nays. Senate committee substitute for Senate Bill 224 be reported back to full Senate with a favorable recommendation. Very good job. Now, we have one more important bill that I think we can knock out. We won't have to come back this afternoon. I'll give the chair to my able Vice Chairman.
Chair recognizes Senator Whitmire to lay out Senate Bill 1151. Dean?
Huh? Members, Senate Bill 1151 will require that before a defendant is released on bond, they must provide a minimum of 10% on the bond set in their case. This issue has gained attention in Harris County recently, where even capital murder suspects with past convictions were released from jail after posting a minimal percentage fee. In some instances, bond companies were collecting as little as 2% and then setting up a payment plan for the defendants. After hearing from local officials, crime victims, the Harris County Bail Bond Board approved a new rule requiring that minimum be no less than 10%. This bill seeks to make that rule a statewide standard to better safeguard all of our communities. I do have a committee substitute to address concerns from stakeholders. I'd like to lay out that substitute this time, Mr. Chairman.
So be it. Adopt.
Adopted the committee substitute for Senate Bill 1151. The substitute will ensure that the bill applies to all types of bondsmen, whether they're property or surety bondsmen, or even insurance companies that often operate these types of business, and clarifies that individuals representing a corporation can take receipt of the payment rather than just the corporation. There was some misinformation whether this bill would apply to all counties, but the Code of Criminal Procedure clearly states in Article 1.02 that all the procedures in this code shall govern all the criminal proceedings. Members, I know your offices have been flooded with emails from bail bondsmen. However, I do not think that this legislation will hurt their business, and I do believe it's in the best interest of public safety in Texas.
And members, any questions? Any questions from the members?
You got them, Pete. Let me do this way. Andy Kahn, good Crime Stoppers. I need to keep my corn. I know. Andy, state your name and who you represent and take.
Thank you, Senator.
about
My
2
name's
minutes.
Andy Kahn, Director of Victim Services, Crime Stoppers of Houston, and we're here wholeheartedly in support of Senate Bill 1151. Been a board member of Parents of Murdered Children and Surviving Family Members of Homicide for over 30 years, and I've always felt confident advising families when a defendant is charged in a case of murder and they're given a bond that they have to pay 10%. And for 30 years, I've done that. That confidence was shattered last year when we discovered, and we had no idea this was happening, that was not happening in cases. And in some cases, some defendants were getting 5%, 2%, 1%. And there was a very few bond companies that were doing this, but we were shocked. It lost a lot of our confidence in the system. The Senate Bill 1151 basically puts everybody on the same playing field, and it's going to restore confidence in the criminal justice system. I'm going to very briefly read a statement that Paul Castro asked me to read to the community. He could not make it here today. He's got a board meeting at the school that he is the principal of. For those that do not know, Paul Castro's son, David, was murdered in what became known as the Houston Astros road rage incident. And that happened last year. David Castro, they were leaving an Astros game. Something happened. They were chased for 20 miles. Bullets were shot into the car, and David Castro ended up getting murdered.
18-year-old senior in high school.
Westside High School.
With his dad in the car.
With his dad.
With his dad in the car, and his brother that had to witness that as well. So basically, Paul asked me to read this into the record. Dear Senators, I ask you to listen to a real-life horror story and let that guide you in your vote today. On July 6, 2021, a convicted felon who was just released from prison murdered my son David Castro in a road rage incident after an Astros game. David was, and forever, will be 17 years old. He was set to start his senior year where he would lead the percussion section at Westside High School. He was a good kid who was determined to serve his state and nation after college as a community leader and engineer. Our life was indefinitely changed that night. Thanks to hard work of the Houston Police Department and the 100-plus tips called into Crime Stoppers, his killer was identified and arrested in 1 month. Our family was able to breathe a sigh of relief when we heard the bond had been set at $350,000. The thought that this accused killer being free while awaiting justice was harrowing. We were told by the DA's office that our wait for trial could be as long as 4 years. We rested assured, knowing that the accused killer would have a difficult time raising 10%, $35,000. Not even a month after his arrest, we were notified that the killer had gotten out on bond. We were sure that that bond was negotiated down. We do not want any family members to go through what we have gone through. Thanks in part to Senator Whitmire, Harris County Commissioners Court passed a policy dealing with this issue, mandating that for violent offenders in Harris County, there must be a minimum 10%. We want to take that statewide because statewide law carries much more weight than a policy which is easily subjected to be overturned. So I'm asking the committee, on behalf of the Paul Castros of the world, the surviving family members of homicide, and for all law-abiding citizens, just to mandate that everyone's on the same playing field, and we know going in when a person is charged with an offense such as murder that you're going to have to put 10% down. And I do believe that the judges in Harris County were also caught off guard, and they had no idea that this was happening, and that also greatly disturbed the judiciary of Harris County to find out when they were setting a bond for X amount of dollars that in certain cases that was negotiated down to a payment plan.
Very
we
good.
appreciate your help. Thank you.
Thank you, good job. Bill Kelly, City of Houston, is in support. Thomas Parkinson is in support. And Joel Johnson is in support. Anyone else would like to testify in support of committee substitute for Senate Bill 1151? If not, there's a card that would like to testify against. Ken Good. State your name, who you represent, Ken.
My name is Ken Good. I'm an attorney specializing in bail law. I'm also a member of the Board of Directors of the Professional Bondsmen of Texas. I'm here to testify in opposition to 1151. We've made a few comments about the bill. I would like to point out just a couple of matters. This is not the Harris County local rule. It's an across-the-board rule. It applies to any bond that's posted. Not the Harris County local rule only applies to 17 charges. The bail bond industry is not different than any other industry. Criminal defense attorneys work with defendants on payment plans. The courts work with defendants on payment plans for fines and fees. The bail industry also works with families on payment plans to get people out of jail. There is a compromise on this issue. The issue is Harris County on these offenses from the Constitution, that they're not following what they have historically done. If we limited this provision to the constitutional provisions that they should be detaining people, then I think that would solve this issue for Harris.
What do you think is a reasonable amount? If you're opposed to the 10% requirement, what do you like?
Well, across the board? I mean, here's the problem with the 10%. There are situations where we charge less than 10%. If you have an attorney or we know you, we charge 8%. This bill does not regulate what we charge. It only says that a bond, we have to collect 10% before we post the bond. So if you have an attorney and we know you and we give you an 8%, we want to charge you 8% because it's less risk. You have to pay us 10% and then we have to refund 2% to you after the bond's posted. That's not the intent of this bill. And
The intent of the bill is to prohibit someone, your clients, from letting someone out of bond, a repeat violent offender, on a 2% bond of the stated amount of bond, set bond, which you know traditionally most folks believe is 10%. And it's being violated in Harris County and across the state, and so we could probably put it in the Constitution. I bet you $100 I could get 2/3 of both houses to say a 10% minimum on a bond for the violent offenses, and it would be in the Constitution because the public would vote it in. And I'm not doing that because I think we need to do the 10% by law, monitor it, and go forward. But I promise you, the public would put it in the Constitution, probably a hell of a lot more than 10%, quite frankly.
Your Honor, I want to say Your Honor, I apologize.
No, that's all right.
Senator Whitmire, if your bill says we're going to require you to charge 10% and collect it before you post the bond, that's different than what it says. This bill doesn't seek to regulate what is charged. You know, the industry average is 10%. Sometimes we charge more if it's an out-of-county bond. If it's, just like the courts, if the bond's higher because of a criminal history, then there's going to be
We've been
higher
working with your
percentage.
folks to come up with the language, and if you want to make recommendations going forward, my office will continue to visit with you. But the bill is intended to set a 10%. You heard Paul Castro's situation. That's
Yes,
just
sir.
one. That's just one of hundreds that we're dealing with. People, before the local rule, we're letting folks out for 2%, 1%. And quite frankly, I haven't addressed yet the financing. It's crazy that you have a violent armed robber and you finance his bond and don't expect that he's going to go out and do more armed robberies to pay off his bond.
Well, and that's why I heard you say, what's the compromise? And that's why the first.
I said, I didn't ask for a compromise because I'm not compromising on public safety.
Yes,
This
sir.
is a public safety issue. I'm simply saying, for the record, if you don't like 10%, what do you like? You like to be totally free to negotiate it.
The majority of states that regulate.
I don't give a damn
charge-
about the majority of states.
All right. The issue here is the states that do regulate payment plans, they allow a small down payment.
Well, that's other states, and, they've got a lot of crap I don't approve of, like an income tax and other things. We're talking about Texas, and the bottom line is, we're trying to get violent offenders off the street, and your business serves a purpose,
Yes, sir.
for sure. Senator Huffman's trying to transform it in behalf of public safety, but the public of Houston was alarmed at a 2% bond for a $100,000 set bond. We always thought it was 10. The judges, the prosecutors, the crime victims, the public. And here you've got Houston folks, bail bondsmen, your clients, doing a 2%. And
Well,
that's just
historically-
wrong. So we're going to do it at 10. If you don't like that, we'll raise it a little bit more and put it in the Constitution.
One of the issues that we have, and, we want to point out issues because as the professional bondsman of Texas, we want to make sure that any rule that's implemented, we want to make sure that we're in compliance with that. And so, as the statute is written for, it applies to both criminal code counties and bail bond board counties. I would
we've
point out to
addressed
you
that.
that under Chapter 17, on criminal code counties, which is the vast majority of the state, smallest
Okay.
counties, the job of the sheriff is to only determine whether a person has, a surety has the financial resources to post a bond.
Sure, I understand.
There's no regulatory scheme to allow the sheriff to determine whether they have collected a 10% fee before the bond was posted. I would just point out, if we're going to enact this kind of statute, we need to give the sheriff in a criminal code county or somebody in the
I
regular.
haven't heard from a sheriff one concerned about that.
Yes, Your Honor.
You could
Yes, sir.
probably find some. But anyway, thank you for doing your job, and we'll continue to work on it. Senator Huffman?
Yeah, I have a quick question. I'm just wondering, when someone doesn't show up for court, how active is your company or the ones you represent? It just doesn't seem to be any action on the part of the bonding companies to go out and look for anybody these days.
Your Honor, Harris
Because there's
County-
just, how many fugitives do we hear just in Harris County, just from DA Ogg?
600, let's see, let me
Like
think.
80,000 or something? I mean,
There was
600 fugitives.
There was over 600
That's just
fugitives
for
that hadn't
murder.
been arrested for murder, and so they're not even on bond. I think it was under 300 that were on bond that were
how many people do you have out
Your
looking
Honor,
for them?
Harris County is a very active state on forfeitures. That means they follow the law. They don't have any discretion, and so we have limited time period. We have things that we have to do. As you know, bondsmen don't have the authority to arrest, so that means we have to go hire a recovery person, and we pay.
Sorry for the
10%.
inconvenience.
We
Yeah.
pay 10% of the face amount of the bond, but if we don't get them back, we pay 100% of the bond. So
How active is the bond forfeiture division right now in Harris County?
very active. I mean, we have.
Well,
cases-
that's not what I hear, and you're the expert, but.
What about revocations?
That's
I
not
never
what
hear
I
of a revocation. What would be the incident?
Well, one of the problems we have-
Because we have violent offenders out, they commit another crime while they're on bond. Back when I was down there, you would be revoking the first bond. That's not done now. You just get another bond.
Well, That's part of the problem. We file 17, 16, 17, 19s where we're notifying the court there's a problem with the defendant, and they refuse to do anything about that.
That's kind of my point right
And so
there.
that's the problem is the bail industry feels like we're being punished because the judges are not doing their job.
We're doing what, we're responding to our constituents, so thank you. We've run out of time. We have to go to the floor at 11 o'clock.
Thank you for allowing me to.
Sorry, but it's just frustrating.
No, I understand. We've got enough
Not
votes to get
frustrating,
out. And with y'all's permission, I'll let the clerk read the witnesses who are in opposition. There's a large list of them. So I'd like to move, Pete, you want to call the election on committee substitute for 1151?
Senator Whitmire.
Committee substitute.
The committee,
Yeah, move it. I move to report committee substitute for 1151 to the full Senate.
Senator Whitmire moves to refer as committee substitute for 1151 to the full Senate.
Yes, sir.
Clerk, call the roll.
Whitmire,
Yes.
Flores,
Yes.
Huffman,
Aye.
King.
Aye.
4-0.
4-0.
4-0.
Will be reported back.
It will be reported back to the full Senate.
Committee substitute for.
Committee substitute for 1151, Senate Bill 1151 by Dean Whitmire.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you, committee. Well, we pulled it off, didn't we? Good job, Laura.
One.